Well, October's here, so come and find out what I read last month. Hello! I'm sorry it's taken me a few days to get my September wrap up done, but it's been a busy month. And I'm going to tell you all about it, and I will tell you about some of the exciting things I've been reading and my wonderful opportunity to share my love of books. I'll tell you more about that later. Song for a Whale by Lynn Kelly. Really enjoyed this. It's the story of Iris, who is a bit of a tech genius. She's got a real interest in radio and is profoundly deaf. But the only people in her family that are also deaf are her grandparents. So the book's set shortly after the passing of her grandfather, and she becomes really excited about the idea of helping out a whale who doesn't have communication with the other whales around him. And she goes on the quest to find the sound that will help this whale. And along the way, it's kind of an exploration of her isolation and how she finds community. Definitely recommend it. Deep Light by Frances Hardinger. Now, this is Deep Light. It's really quite high fantasy, set in a world and there's lots of world building. But it's set in the world after the gods have torn each other to pieces, and it's a real exploration of whether those that we save as gods are always all that we believe they are. Also, an exploration of identity and community and and about value. The interesting thing here is that there are a number of deaf characters, and the deafness in this story is coming from those that have been involved in diving. Now, the whole plot is about the diving for finding parts of gods to gain the powers from them. And within this world, as it's built, you've got a real value held into those people who are deafened by their exploration underwater. I think I've got an extract. He noticed the steel and scrimshaw ear studs worn proudly by a couple of Rig's companions. Rig is a gang leader, to indicate that they were sea-kissed. A degree of hearing loss was common amongst those who spent a lot of time diving or trusting their lives to submarines. Sea-kissed deafness was the mark of a seasoned aquanaut, and therefore generally respected. Sign? He asked them quickly in myriad sign language, and received a nod. Many seekers could lip read or retain some of their hearing, so it was always polite to ask whether they preferred speech or sign. And I think that normalising of deafness within the book is really interesting. And you also get a fantastic scene between the main character and who's called Hark, and there's a lovely interaction between Hark, the main character, the sea-kissed girl who becomes his friend. There's an interesting plot there about his role in what it means to be disabled, what is disability, what is difference, and how do you know whether something should be healed. Right. But there's a really interesting interaction between him, her, and an old priest, where the priest has very little sign language, and you've got this wonderful interaction where there's an inequity in the sign competence between the different characters, and it's working out how they communicate together. So, if you like complicated and deep world building and really sort of that high fantasy and if you really like that sort of deep world building and fantasy world, this is beautifully written, really evocative of mood and place, and it's just really enjoyable read. Skandar and the Unicorn Thief by A.F. Steadman. Okay, this is Skandar and the Unicorn Thief by A.F. Steadman, and I picked it up thinking that there was a deaf character in it. I don't know why I had this idea. It seems to have found its way into pages with other books with deaf characters, but a very enjoyable read. I suppose kind of Harry Potter meets the world of Rick Riordan, and with unicorns. And these are not your gentle, beautiful unicorns. These are savage unicorns. And the basic premise is that children, when they reach 13, get the opportunity to find out whether they have been chosen, have been destined to be a unicorn rider. And the plot follows the chosen one. I mean, very much the chosen one thing. But Skandar is initially told that he is not allowed to take the test to find out if he's a unicorn rider. And then gets taken to the island and into the school for unicorn riders. Really interesting twists in there, and I don't want to spoil those at all. But there's some really interesting twists about family and identity and belonging. But there were no deaf characters in this one, but they but very good read nonetheless. Being Seen by Elsa Sigensen. There are two non-fiction books that I've read this month, both of them on themes of representation in fiction, and I'm going to talk about each of them. The first one was a reread. I'd listened to it some months ago, and I wanted to hear it again, and also it's one of those unusual situations where I first of all listened to it on Audible, but then I've gone back and bought the Kindle book, and that's Being Seen by Elsa Jensen. And it's I mean, the audiobook, the benefit of the audiobook is that it is read by the author. I love it when you actually get that first person voice, and it's a mixture of there's a real mixture of her telling her life story, but then also talking about the importance of representation and being seen, being there in the media that you're consuming. And as a deaf-blind writer and an author and a professor of creative writing, she just blew me away with the power of what she was saying, and thinking about reasons why bad representation hurts the minority population. I think perhaps one of them is she talks a lot about Daredevil. I mean, I love Daredevil. I would say of the Marvel superheroes, Daredevil is my favourite. But I know that is not good representation of how a deaf person. It's not good representation of how a blind person interacts with the world. And as she says, he wanders around with a stick that's too small. He wanders around with a cane that's too small, and leaves it in alleyways. But really interesting, powerful writing. Recommend it to anyone who's interested in disability representation within fiction. Disfigured by Amanda Leduc. The other non-fiction title that I've actually listened to because it's read by the author is Disfigured by Amanda Leduc, which looks at fairy tales and folk tales and those tropes within them about disability and disfigurement. And again, really powerful writing and looking at what messages about ourselves and about disabled people within in the community around us we're absorbing from those folk tales, really from the early stages. So yeah, again, one I really recommend if you've got an interest in the power of story. Signs of Survival by Renee Hartman. Signs of Survival was something that I picked up on, just sort of fascinated by. It wasn't exactly written how I'd imagined. I mean, I picked it up as this is the story of a deaf girl and her sister who in Nazi Germany. I was actually expecting the deafness to be the reason for Nazi persecution, but actually the plot. No, it's not a plot because this is a true story. This is written from the interviews with the two women, Renee and Herta, and it's a really interesting exploration of what it means to be persecuted and to try and find your place. And there's some really interesting interaction as at some points the hearing sister is in a more secure place, and then later, after they are in the refugee camp, it's her sister who finds deaf community, who seems much more secure. Some of it is absolutely heartbreaking, as any story from the Holocaust is, but ultimately it's a real story of family and overcoming. But it's just heartbreaking to read about these two sisters who are separated from their parents as their parents try and save them from Nazi persecution. Another interesting thing in it is that one of the sisters is blonde and gets read as Aryan at several points in the story, and that whole idea of the of identity, of Jewish identity, of deaf identity, and of Czechoslovakian identity are all mixed in. It's really, really well written and interesting book. Not a story, written from their from interviews with them as a memoir, but definitely one to read if you're interested in either Holocaust or in deaf identity. Wonder by R.J. Palacio. Okay, so I've talked about some books that I really like. This one made me really angry, and I think it's because the book Wonder, which follows the Augie August as he starts a mainstream school for the first time. He's been homeschooled, and he has facial disfigurement, and the acceptance that children will bully someone who looks different just makes me so angry. There is no reason why a child should accept the kind of abuse that is told in here as if it is just a normal part of childhood and should be accepted. I find it really strange that this book is often pointed at as heartwarming and because the children accept him. I'm sorry, but I expect the children to accept him. I have seen so many wonderful children who look unusual, who look different, but are fully accepted into their community. It made me break inside that it's just so accepted in some areas that bullying will happen, and the best hope is that the victim will somehow change the minds and hearts of the bullies. There just is no feeling in here that actually the bullies are wrong and it should be stopped. And I think I am going to do a fuller video and review of this book, because I think I look at the reviews on Amazon for it, and people are raving about it, but There was a bit at the end where the teacher says that he knows the bullying's been going on all this time and has done nothing about it, and I just don't get it. The main character is a lovely character, but the world he is in is not heartwarming. And as a teacher of the deaf, I got really frustrated by the deaf representation in here. Because Aoki is defined as, having normal hearing. Yeah, but however, he doesn't have full ears. It's described as, I don't really have ears. Well, I do, but they don't exactly look like normal ears. Now, I think there is a common misunderstanding that microtia, small ears, does not cause hearing loss. But whilst it doesn't cause a huge hearing loss, it does cause hearing loss. And later in the story, it sort of casually mentions that he's been having trouble hearing and then he's fitted with hearing aids. And it just feels like it feels like the author has avoided the subject of hearing loss early in the book because it suits them that way and it's easier to write. And then later, when it becomes useful, when it becomes a useful thing to have a hearing aid that can be stolen by bullies and become evidence of bullying, then it's introduced. It just sort of suddenly comes in. Ever since I was little, the doctors told my parents that someday I'd need a hearing aid. I don't know why this has always freaked me out a bit. Maybe because anything to do with my ears bothers me a lot. My hearing was getting worse, but I hadn't told anyone about it. The ocean sound that was always in my head had been getting louder. So he'd always had a hearing loss, and it got worse. And it just seems like such a erasure of the impact of mild to moderate hearing loss. I know that's very much because I'm coming very much from a deaf awareness perspective, but it just annoyed me. Right, so I did not like this book. I think I probably need to do a more detailed analysis of why I don't like it, but there are so many much better books that include characters with microtia just living and being normal. There needs to be more positive representation and a real expectation that bullying is wrong, that abusing someone because of how they look is wrong, and that it should be dealt with. Another really exciting thing I've done this month is I had the opportunity to speak at the BATOD conference. That's the British Association for Teachers of Deaf Children and Young People. And that was just brilliant to have that opportunity to run a workshop, 50 minutes talking about how my interest in books and specifically about deaf representation. So I had a fantastic time. And here are some of my new children's books. I'm loving doing the reviews. So if you want to hear more of my ramblings about books, please subscribe, and it'd be lovely to hear in the comment section what it is that you've enjoyed and what you would like to see me review. Thank you very much. Bye.